Hi.
Hi.
How
How
are
are you?
you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Thanks for willing to do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I could just jump around then before getting to Fire Emblem.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, at least based off your resume, are you originally from North Carolina, or did you
I
just go to
am.
college? Okay.
Yeah, born and raised. I grew up in Charlotte and then moved to LA right after school. So I went to college in North Carolina and then spent the summer at home in 2013 and then fall of 2013 I was out here in LA. Been here ever since.
Was acting in general the goal, or was it voice acting specifically?
No, actually, I came out here to do on camera stuff. And I realized pretty quickly when I got out here that that's kind of a terrible life. And especially with my physical type, I'm 5'9", I'm relatively thin. And so I was getting auditions for things like the stripper, the former stripper, the prostitute, the former prostitute, and none of it paid. And I got one audition for HBO and they wanted me fully naked. And I was like, I don't love this. So I had about a year-long identity crisis and tried to figure out what else I might possibly want to do with myself. This was back in 2015 or 2016. And then I hadn't been acting for about a year, and then out of nowhere, a friend contacted me and said, "Hey, have you ever done any voice acting?" And I said, "No, but I'd love to. Why?" And she said, "Well, I know this studio, they're having an open call for some dubs. You should go." And I said, "All right." So I stumbled into the dubbing studio. They threw me in a booth. They threw some stuff up on the screen. I dubbed a couple of scenes and they said, "Okay, great. You will be in touch." Didn't hear from him for a few months. And then suddenly they sent an email and said, "Hey, we have a role for you in this dub. Do you want it?" And I said, "Sure." And after that, they just kept casting me. And through that process, I would meet other actors and new directors and engineers. And then after a while, those directors and actors and engineers went to work at other studios. And then I'd get a call saying, "Hey, we worked together on that thing, and I'm now at this other studio. I've got a part for you in this show. Do you want to come do it?" And I said, "Yeah." And one day I woke up and went, "Oh, I have a career." And so then I just committed to it back in about 2018 maybe was when I started really going, "Okay, I this is what I'm doing. I enjoy it. I'm good at it. Let's do it."
It does seem like you work in all avenues of voiceover then.
I do. I haven't really gotten into doing original animation. I will admit it's not my strong suit. I am learning. I don't know if you're familiar with Courtney Lynn. She's an amazing voice
I've
actress
talked to
and
her. Yeah.
she's phenomenal. I love her. I was just talking to her yesterday about she's like the animation queen. And so every time I get an animation audition that I don't know what to do with, I just call her and I'm like, "Courtney, what do I do with this?" And so, but yeah, I've done mostly dubbing. I've done a lot of corporate voiceover, which is not very exciting. Things like phone recordings, internal training videos. But yeah, a lot of dubbing. I'm starting to do more video games, which is really where my heart and soul is. So yeah.
Well, I know one of the other besides Fire Emblem, one of the other big anime games that you got was Dynasty Warriors.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a really interesting experience. That was many years ago, and the recording for that was so chaotic that it was the one project I've done where the process of making it felt almost as chaotic as the game itself. You know, when you play Dynasty Warriors, there's all this stuff coming at you and things are happening really fast and it's the waves of stuff and that's kind of what making that game felt like.
Was
Um,
it like a weird audition process, or like
no, so it was actually what was really interesting about it was we had two directors, two main voice directors. Um, and the material that the client gave us was very secretive. So there were several times where like I had my one main character, oh my gosh, Wang Yi, I think.
yep.
And then there would be several others, which is pretty normal for games or even dubs. They'll say, here's your character, but can you also do this bartender, play this person on the street, play this, play that? Well, for a lot of Dynasty Warriors, they'd say, we need you to also play this character, but we have no information about her. So let's just figure something out. And so it was this really interesting um, collaborative chaos where there was so much information we didn't have. And so we were just all in the trenches figuring it out together. Um, and yeah, man, I haven't thought about Dynasty Warriors in a while. It was a good group of people to work with. I really liked the voice directors on that game.
Do you have a special story of how you got into SAG too?
It is so boring. Uh, so something that's interesting that people might not know about the difference between voiceover and on-camera work for SAG is, so in order to get into SAG, you have to either be Taft-Hartley'd, which most people know. That's when they fill out the paperwork and they say, "Hey, we want you to work on this project, so here's the paperwork. Congrats, you're in the union." Or you have to collect 3 background waivers. So if you work union background 3 times, then you can get into the union. So for on camera, those like Taft-Hartley projects can be really hard to come by because I think you have to be what's considered a principal role in order to have that be your entry into the union. Well, for voiceover, every role is a principal role. So it's a lot easier to get that Taft-Hartley because if you do any voice, you're a principal role, you got it. So my very boring story is I had a friend who was directing a dub at VSI, and she needed people to come in and just do utility or additional voices, Walla, that kind of thing. And so I got an email that was like, "Hey, Kate wants you to come do Walla and utility on this show. It's a union dub. Here's your Taft-Hartley. Fill it out." And I went, "Okay." So I just filled out the paperwork and sent it back and went in and did some additional voices on, oh gosh, what show was it? I think it was, I think it's called On the Spectrum. It's a beautiful show on HBO about autistic young adults. And so I got to just play some of the background characters, and I got my SAG card. So
Are you normally using your natural voice for a majority of what you do too?
yeah, so because most of my work is in dubbing and a lot is in live action dubbing, there's a fun challenge with live action dubbing where you want to match the person on screen as much as possible, and not just in the way they sound, but you want your voice to sound like it could feasibly be coming from that person. So for live action dubs, it's pretty much all my voice, but with little tweaks. So things like if I'm playing a teenager and she looks kind of stereotypical, popular, pretty girl teenager, then I might just turn up the breathiness on my voice just a little bit and maybe pitch myself up just a little bit. So it's still me, but it's this slightly altered version of me that just sounds a little bit younger, sounds a little bit softer, and might sound a little bit more like what you see on screen. So it's not a wild character voice. I dubbed a woman who she had this look in her eye all the time, like she was plotting something. And that wasn't necessarily her character, but she had that look on screen. So I just added a little bit more, a little bit more rasp to her voice. Because for some reason, just doing my voice but with a little bit extra rasp seemed to fit that glint that was in her eye. So yeah, I haven't really. I've done some children's animation dubbing where I've done wild character voices, which can be really fun, but it can also be really exhausting. But usually a lot of what I do is just my voice with minor tweaks, which is kind of a fun game to play.
Have you gotten the opportunity to do voices at all yet?
boy voices. I have, but I was actually dubbing a singing role.
Oh,
So it was for a kids animation, and they had it was two kids were the two main characters, and they had the speaking voice for the little boy, but the actor couldn't really sing. And I was in the studio where they were recording that, working on something else. And actually, now that I'm remembering this, I adapted song lyrics for that show. So they would send me the lyrics, and I would help fix them so that they actually were singable. And so I was in the studio one day, and I finished my session. And as I was leaving the booth, they grabbed me and they were like, "Hey, do you have a minute?" And I said, "Yeah, what's up?" And they're like, "We really need some vocals on just like two songs on this show. Can you do like a kind of a boy voice?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So, the sort of like typical way that you do like a boy voice, kind of pitch up and give him a little rasp, but I had to sing. So it was kind of a boy voice. I don't know. Yeah, I'm just rambling now. Um, but it can be really fun. I remember when I was doing my animation demo many years ago, a lovely man named Richard Tatum helped me find my sort of baseline cartoon boy voice, because his method of doing demos is tell me all of the character voices that you do, all of the accents you do, all of the impressions you do, even if they're god awful. And one of the voices I had listed was the stupid voice I use when I talk to my cats, which sounds sort of like, "Oh, you're so cute. Look at you. You're really cute. Ah." And I was doing that voice, and he said, "Pitch it up a little bit." And so I was, "Oh, you're really cute. Oh, look at you, little cat." And he went, "Okay, now add some rasp." "Oh, look at you. You're really cute. Ah." And he goes, "That's your anime teen boy voice, or like kid boy." And I went, "Interesting. Okay."
yeah. Are you a fan of anime much?
You know, I haven't really gotten into it.
Okay.
There are certainly specific anime series that I have loved. I think Death Note was the first one that I was introduced to many years ago, and I mean, it's a staple for a reason. It's phenomenal. I only recently watched Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood for the first time. Phenomenal. Uh, Sword Art Online, I loved. So some of the big ones, like I watched Attack on Titan, um, but I haven't quite found my specific like genre of anime that I love. So I'm still kind of dipping my toe into different styles and different types of anime, because I think once I figure out like, oh, that's the kind of thing I really love, then I'll be in. But
Yeah.
I didn't really grow up with it, and so I'm just now discovering it as an adult.
Were you aware of what Fire Emblem was at all?
I was peripherally aware of it. But I played for the first time last year. I played Fire Emblem Three Houses, because so did you know Billy Kometz?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I there was one day Triangle Strategy had just come out, and Billy and I were both in Triangle Strategy. And it was the week he was in the hospital when he first got sick, and I was sitting with him in the hospital, and I mentioned that Triangle Strategy had just, or that I was playing Triangle Strategy, and I was like, "It's actually really fun. I didn't think I was gonna like it, but it's genuinely fun, and I'm enjoying playing it." And he was like, "Oh man, have you played Three Houses? Have you played Fire Emblem?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And he went, "Dude, you just do me a favor. Just get Three Houses. You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it." And so I went, "Yeah, okay." And I picked it up and I started playing it right after he passed. And I loved it. It's so much fun, and I fell in love with those characters. Um, so it was a big honor to get to join the Fire Emblem family. And every time I play it, I think about Billy, and I'm like, "Oh man, Billy, you were right. You were right. I love it."
I know most people say that when those auditions come in that it's all like secretive and pretty general.
Yep. Yeah, I didn't know that it was Fire Emblem when I read for it. Um, so I called Courtney because the way that the Fire Emblem auditions look on paper, they're very bare bones. And so I looked at it and I was like, oh, I feel like this character is really good for me and it's right in my wheelhouse, but I don't know how to approach this because of the way the script is formatted. I was like, it's so vague. And so Courtney helped me with it, and then that was the one I booked. And so big thanks to her. But yeah, yeah, all the characters are code named. The project's code named. The character art is not the real character art. Um, so it's all very secretive.
Was it Patrick directing you or somebody else?
It was Caitlin Galt, actually,
Okay, yeah.
which was a delight because Caitlin is one of my closest friends,
Oh,
and she had nothing to do with my casting. So it was a pretty funny moment when she realized she was going to be directing me. I got a bunch of very silly text messages, and it was it was so nice to walk into that session because I was a little nervous. I was like, I want to do this justice. I love Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem means a lot to a lot of people. By that point, I'd figured out who the character was and I'd looked her up and I was like, oh my God, this character is amazing. And I know this character means a lot to people. I don't want to screw it up. And so I walked into the session, and to have Caitlin be there as like a touchstone for me was really lovely. And it was the first time I've ever gotten to actually work with her. She's a phenomenal director. Um, so it was a real treat all around.
how could you relate to Heather then?
Well, I am bisexual, and so the fact that Heather is an a canonically queer character was very cool. Um, and obviously, I related to her on that point, but I also just love her playfulness. I really hope I get to voice more for her in the future because her spirit is so she's feisty but kind of in a gentle way. So she's not feisty in a way that's looking for a fight. She's feisty in a way where she's like, play with me, you know, bite back, play with me. And that's a really fun character vibe to play that I've never gotten to explore before. I've been the feisty villain, I've been the feisty seductress, I've been the feisty teenager, but there's something like gently, what's the word I'm looking for? Um like benevolently playful about her. And that's very fun.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure you saw this too. That a big reason why people were so excited about it was that her voice lines were. I'm pretty sure it's the first time where it's like a very clear lesbian character talking about that.
Yeah, so that was actually one of the first things that happened in the session. Because, like I said, I had figured out through some sleuthing that Heather was the character I was going to play. And I looked up some of her stuff from Radiant Dawn, and the way that I saw it, I was like, oh, she's queer coded. She's they hint at her being a lesbian. So when I walked into the session, Caitlin was so excited. She was like, Jen, do you know who you're playing? Look at this character art. She's so cool. And I was like, I know. And so we geeked out about that for a second. Um, and then I think one of the first things I said, I was like, I love how heavily like gay coded she is. And Caitlin went, oh, it's not coding. She is. And I went, yes. And so it was really, it was honestly kind of a surprise because I think I'm conditioned to expect any sort of queer nature or relationship to be hinted at, but not confirmed, especially in media that's very popular in certain parts of the world where that's not as accepted. Um, I expect for things to be hinted at and sort of joked about, but left kind of up to interpretation. And so the fact that they were like, "Oh no, she likes women," was such like it was a breath of fresh air to go, "Oh, all right, cool, great, let's do this."
Do you have a? I'm sure there's probably more than one. But do you have a single favorite line?
Oh gosh. I did the session so long ago. I'm trying to remember. Uh, honestly, the most fun lines we had were the short ones because I remember we did a lot of short lines that were like quick, supposed to be quick responses to things. But because I got to play with them, I don't remember specifically anyone because it's been too long and the session was a whirlwind. But, just things like if the line is just like, okay, that's the very open ended. So we got to play with them a lot. The longer lines that are more specific, it's like, okay, we kind of know how that needs to sound. We know what purpose this line serves. But for the short ones, because her personality is so vibrant, okay could be okay or okay. And so we really got to tune the dials on it to be like, do we want it to be flirtier? Do we want it to be sassier? Do we want it to be more to herself? And that was just playtime on those. Uh, so those I remember the most, playing with the short lines and having these great moments where it'd be very up in the air. So they'd say, I don't know, give us whatever you feel like it should be, and then every second or third take, Caitlin would bust out laughing and go, "I love that!" And then the lovely guys from Nintendo, I'd look over at the Zoom call and they'd be giggling, and it's always really fun when you can make everyone in the room laugh.
Was there any basis off the Japanese performance in terms of developing?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Nope, they didn't play me any reference, which sometimes they do. Um, but for this, we started the session by playing my audition back, which is a pretty normal thing. You do a listen and repeat at the top of the session. They'll say, "All right, this is what you sent us. Listen and repeat." So if on my audition I go, "Well now," then I hear that back and I go, "Well now," and try to match it so that I get in that same thing that they heard and booked me off of. And then from there, it's like, okay, so in your audition, you were a little darker, so let's lighten her up a little bit. She's a little more silly. So let's try this line again, but put some silliness into it. And then you do that, and then eventually you hit a point where they go, okay, let's dive into the script. And so it was only ever based off of the combination of what I sent in on my audition and the information that they gave me at the start.
Oh, you touched on it a little bit, but what were your thoughts on when you saw her design
Oh,
for the first time?
she's so cool. Honestly, one of my first thoughts was, ooh, I could cosplay her. Um, and so I'd love to have a cosplay made of her main outfit. Um, yeah, she's just a delight. Everything about her is great. I love her.
You downloaded the mobile game at all?
I did. I haven't updated it, so I haven't had a chance to dive in and try to find her. But back when I played Three Houses, I downloaded Heroes and started playing a little bit, and I enjoyed it. And what's funny is there's a there's a sort of mixed experience of being good friends with a lot of people who work in these sorts of games, which is I get really excited to hear their voices, and then I can't unhear them.
Yeah.
So I remember one of the last things that happened was I pulled one of Kyle McCarley's characters,
Oh yeah.
and Kyle is just always Kyle to me. And so I'm playing, and he's doing his little voice lines, and I texted Kyle, and I was like, "You're all over my Fire Emblem Heroes right now," and he was like, "Ah ha ha." And then I think that's actually the last day that I played it. because I hit a point where I'm like, okay, Kyle, and yeah, I need to pick it back up again. It's a lot of fun, and I gotta
Aside from
find
who you,
Heather.
oh yeah, aside from who you've mentioned already, are you like who else are you friends with? That's part of the franchise.
Um, Part of the franchise. Allegra Clark is a
Yep.
lovely human. Some of her voice work in Three Houses is some of my favorite. When I work a lot with new actors, new voice actors, so either people who have done stage and on camera and are looking to transition to voice work, or people who are brand new to it. Um, and so I help, like, okay, let's look at the basics and mic technique and things like that. And whenever I'm teaching someone the basics of like anime and JRPGs and things like that, I always send them clips of Allegra in Three Houses as Dorothea and Shamir, and I'm like, just listen to her, she's so good. So Allegra's great. Jeremy Lee. Uh, I don't know. I don't know if Erica Lindbeck is
Yep.
in Houses. Is she? Okay. Amanda Lee, Amelie, um, Kyle. I think those are the people that I'm closest to. Um, and then I peripherally know several others just by virtue of being around in the industry for a while. But those are the ones where when I hear their voices, I'm like, oh hey Allegra, oh hey Kyle, oh hey Erica, there you are.
Yeah. Well, is there anything that you want to say to the Fire Emblem community?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's really quite an honor, and I hope I have done Heather justice in the little time I was able to voice her, and I look forward to hopefully doing more, because it's a wonderful universe, and the characters are so wonderful, and it's so much fun, and it's yeah, just I guess thanks for having me is the summary of it all.
Is there anything else that's upcoming or part of you can safely talk about, or
I can't. I can't. I am finishing up a year long project that I've been doing that's been eating my brain and taking my soul, and making me sleep at all hours when I'm not working on it. And it's not an interesting, it's just been a long corporate voiceover project that I've been recording from home. So I'm very excited for that to end, so that I can put all of the energy I've been putting into that into doing the storytelling things that I like to do, and hopefully doing more video games that I can talk about soon, and yeah.
well, my final question is always asking, what do you want your legacy to be?
Ooh. The first thing that popped into my head was that I want to be a welcoming, positive force in the community in general, in the industry. I think I don't have any specific hopes or wishes or plans for what I want for my work. Obviously, I'd love to be in AAA video games someday, but when I think of like a legacy, I think I want to help upcoming actors. I want to be a welcoming, positive person. And I think the reason is because I've had people be welcoming and positive and wonderful to me, like Cissy Jones and Walt Gray, Noshir Dalal. Um, these those sorts of people have been so generous with me, with their time and energy and spirits. And so my immediate thought was, I want to be that for the next generation that comes after me, the way that they have been for me. So,
Thank you. Glad that we got to do this.
hmm?
Thanks. I'm glad that we got to do this.
Yeah, me too. This was lovely. Thank you so much for reaching out.
Yeah, have a good rest of your day
You too.
then. Bye.
Bye.